We do that. We practice. We have, I think, 8 now different energy center meditations that we do. That's an evolution of the last one. And we teach people how to program them. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Let's begin. So I use the word energy centers because if you say chakras, some people will have the wrong understanding of them. But it's cool because these different energy centers of the body are centers of information. They have their own frequency, they have their own energy, they have their own little individual brains, believe it or not. They have their own hormones, their own chemicals. Those different circuit boards are under the control of the autonomic nervous system. Now, stress creates imbalance in the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is switched on for one reason: emergency for preservation. So then you are mobilizing enormous energy to preserve the body, and it should be a short-term thing. The other nervous system, the parasympathetic, is for growth and repair, right? So some people spend the majority of their time living in that high frequency of stress. So then teaching people then how to make a move from that sympathetic system into the parasympathetic system means they have to practice on a daily basis certain fundamental principles. And for me, I think that, more and more people are doing it. When a person begins to slow their brain waves down, they have to go, when you're in stress, when you're in survival, you narrow your focus on a cause. That's called what's called a convergent focus. So now you're blessing the energy centers of the body. They're under the control of the autonomic nervous system. And when the autonomic nervous system moves out of balance, the brain moves out of balance, right? We narrow our focus on the cause, and it causes each one of these different energy centers to move into incoherence as well. And those little individual brains start moving into incoherence and send an incoherent message to the cells and tissues and organs. Hormones then become downregulated, and the body starts moving out of balance. So when we bless the energy centers, or we reprogram these energy centers, 2 things has to happen. They have to be able to slow their brainwaves down. They have to get out of that high beta state. And the way we do it is to go from a narrow focus to a broad focus. When you open your focus, when you open your awareness, that's what creates coherence in the brain, because you're going against that habit of putting your attention on matter. So there's a convergent focus, which is focusing on matter, and then there's a divergent focus, which is focusing on energy. Well, reality is both particle and wave, matter and energy. So if a person can slow their brainwaves down from beta brainwaves to alpha brainwaves, now they're starting to fall out of their thinking brain right into the home of the autonomic nervous system. If the person can't change their brainwaves, it'll never work because they're in their neocortex in their thinking mind, right? So that's one thing that has to happen. The second thing that has to happen is that they have to practice both a convergent focus and a divergent focus. Now, first you focus on that energy center, that's particle, and then you focus on the space around it, that's wave. And so when you open your awareness, and you're able to do that, and you're in your autonomic nervous system, you can put an intention there, which will create more balance in estrogen, more balance in your sexual organs. You move to your second center, you put your attention there. That's where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So now you're beginning to direct energy into that center. But now you become aware of the space around it. Why? To create coherence in that little brain. Send the coherent message to the cells and tissues. Go to your third center, right in the pit of your gut. Well, there's a huge celiac plexus there, or solar plexus, a lot of connections in there. So now, when you tune into that energy, then you put your attention in your heart. It has its own individual brain. And when you make energy here, when energy finally arrives here, guess where it goes automatically? Straight up. We've measured it. So now once you start opening your heart, you get more energy in your heart, you get more energy in your brain. That's why we do it. That's exactly why we open the heart. So it creates a field, and it begins to drive energy to the brain. So now that energy is going to cause the person to have a different consciousness, a different thought pattern, right? And now they're going to be thinking possibility, because in survival, the first 3 ones are all about survival. It's really not a creative process of creating from mind. It's more about a more primitive, humanistic part of us, animal part of us. So then there's the thyroid plexus, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland. So we've seen when people create coherence in each one of these energy centers, and they do it properly, They know how to change their brainwaves. They get into the operating system. They can master convergent and divergent focus. They're no longer living just this way. They've practiced opening their awareness and focus on energy, becoming conscious of it. And as these brains become more coherent and they start producing different signals to hormones and chemicals and to different glands in the body, that's what's being upregulated to make different expressions. We see things like colorectal cancer change, prostatic enlargement, prostatic cancer, impotence, diverticulitis, uterine tumors, acid reflux, food allergies, high liver enzymes. Why is the cells and tissues and organs functioning out of balance? So you can't control that with your conscious mind. You got to get beyond your conscious mind and stay conscious in your subconscious mind. And that's what we do when we slow our brainwaves down. But we don't want just any kind of brainwaves. We want coherent brainwaves. So then there's a coherent message to the cell. Your awareness contributes to that, because as you become aware of those energy centers, what you're actually doing is you're entraining that center to a harmonic of that frequency. And these are called hormones for a reason, because you can begin to harmonize them. And we do that. We practice. We have, I think, 8 now different energy center meditations that we do. That's an evolution of the last one. And we teach people how to program them, how to create more harmony in them. We kind of touched on epigenetics, epi meaning above, genetics meaning gene. So it's not the gene, it's the signal outside of the cell, right? So again, epigenetics means that there's some environmental signal that's actually conditioning this, or selecting and instructing different genes. So, but here's the thing. And people will say, well, yeah, it's the environment, but I lived in a great environment. But again, if they're living by certain emotions that keep them connected to the past, the environment we're talking about is not the environment out there. It's the environment around the cell. So the person's living in the same emotional state, or the same, let's just say toxic state, because it could be chemical too. If you keep exposing the cell to the same state of chemistry, that cell, of course, then is going to weaken. So the emotion is that thing. So you have 2 factory workers working side by side in the same plant, both exposed to asbestos, a carcinogenic chemical. One gets cancer and the other doesn't. Now, why is that? Because it's the internal environment, right, around the cell that's different than the other person there. So many variables. Again, it depends on how sick a person is, how incoherent their brain is, what type of trauma that they're healing from emotionally. There's a lot of variables. What their lifestyle is, their ability to pay attention and focus, to understand information. There's a lot of different variables. But let's just say that it was someone like you or me that wanted to produce some type of change in their brain and body. There's 2 times the door to the subconscious mind opens up. When you wake up in the morning, when you go to bed at night, your brain waves just fluctuate. You go from beta to alpha to theta to delta when you go to sleep at night. When you wake up, you go delta, theta, alpha, beta. So when you wake up a little early, you're kind of in low-level alpha or theta. You're between worlds. Perfect time to meditate, because you have to work as hard to change your brainwaves. You're already kind of there. And so if a person can actually know the formula of how to change their brainwaves, you can do a very healthy, good meditation for 45 minutes to an hour. The problem with most people is they find so many instrumental benefits from doing it that they're not waking up like, oh God, I gotta meditate. They're waking up like, I can't wait to do it. So it's instrumental for a lot of people. So most people in our community spend about 40 to 60 minutes that do it. Some people spend a little bit longer if they're working on activating latent systems for a mystical experience or whatever. But I'm not a big fan of a 5-minute meditation. I'm not a big fan of a 10-minute meditation, unless it's just for a moment to stop and get grounded. I think you can go to deeper and deeper levels, and when you start making a path, carving a path down into that subconscious. The important point is, like, when you're going down that path and all of a sudden there you go, you make the right and you're with your ex and you go, oh. The best thing to do is back up and go down again. That's a victory. That's a victory right there. You became conscious. Then all of a sudden you start thinking about what you have to do at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. All right, you back up, You start heading down again. That's a victory. Most people don't have the patience to do that because it's tedious in the beginning. You keep doing it, you carve that path right down the subconscious. The nerve trunk is going to get bigger. It's going to produce a bigger road because there's more traffic going on it. Now, the person's able to get there a lot faster, and they could have a great meditation in a half an hour because they know how to change their brainwaves.
Right.
Now, I've been doing this a long time, and I have sat with myself for hours. Sometimes you just have to work really hard because you got people, you got meetings, you got to travel, you got contracts, you got all these things, you got family, and you sit down to meditate and your brain is just going to the future or the past, and and you have to.
It takes a while to get it centered.
And if it takes me an hour to get there, I don't care if it takes me, I will not get up. I'm just not that type of person until I'm there. I just will not. And every time I go past that point where I want to stop, you know, that point where you just go, I've had enough, and you just go,
a little longer.
You go a little longer. You step right into the unknown. You have two choices when you get into that discomfort. And I've learned this just in the last few months in witnessing some really cool things we're doing right now. If you move into the discomfort and you run back to the known, but you're not conscious that you're doing it, you just throw in a program, just do what you know how to do because it's uncomfortable. Now you just return back to familiar territory. And that's a program. People do it, so they run some habit, they run some program. The other choice is in that discomfort to apply the formula. And apply it with your eyes open, because that's where we're going. Because we have students that can do it with their eyes open as well as their eyes closed. Now, what's the significance of that? No person, no thing, no experience in your life is going to take your joy away. You could have 1,000 reasons that